I am joined by Mr. Frank Turner. Yes.
Hello, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I've just been painting a cupboard. I'm covered in paint.
That's
It's
cool.
it's the punkest thing ever. But it's also a job I've been ascribed while the missus is away. So
Amazing.
I've also been mixing an album for
Of course.
a punk rock singer songwriter friend of mine. But also painting a cupboard.
I love how painting was kind of like it was first in the list, and then like the
Well,
mixing of this punk rock album.
yeah. Well, that was the most recent thing I was doing was painting. I managed to finish up just in time for the podcast. So here we are.
Oh, look at you. Look at you. Frank, thank you so much for coming on the Heavy Hook Show. I mean, there's just so much to talk about. But what I would like to do first is I would like to play with you a game called This or That, where basically, Frank, I'm just going to ask you to give me one answer to a question, and you don't have to give an explanation why.
Okay,
But
I'm very bad at that, by the way. I like to talk. I like to talk and justify myself,
no,
I'll give it a go.
but we can talk after. We can talk after. So there's three questions just surrounding some of your albums that I wanted to ask you. Okay.
Okay,
So here we go. So for this or that, you have to choose a favorite between poetry of the deed and positive songs for negative people. You don't have to give me an answer why. Just choose one album.
positive songs.
Ah, yeah. Okay. The same rule applies to the next question. Sleep is for the weak, or England keep my bones.
England keep my bones.
Okay. And the last one, you've been very, for somebody that wasn't going to be good at this, you've been very good at
Okay,
this.
I'm restraining myself.
Okay, cool. I like that. And Take Deck Heart or Be More Kind.
Ooh, that's a harder one.
No.
I think probably take that cart, but that's a tough choice.
Amazing. You have had a sensational career. You have played all over the world in front of hundreds, thousands, millions of people. But one thing I wanted to ask you was what has been so far the biggest Spinal Tap moment of your career?
I mean, where to begin? I often find the whole thing of rock star ego to be faintly unsustainable, simply because you make an ass out of yourself so regularly
Yes.
I find that you have to kind of treat everything with a certain pinch of salt in order to kind of sustain any sense of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because you make an arsehole out of yourself all the time. I mean, off the top of my head, I once punched myself in the nuts in front of 10,000 people. Um,
Tell me.
well, it was Million Dead. We were playing Download Festival. It's one of the biggest gigs that band ever did. And there was a guitar solo, which there weren't many of in Million Dead songs. And I was just the singer. So I was fanning about doing the Roger Daltrey mic swinging thing. And the thing about
Nice.
that is, it's quite easy to get it out and to maintain the
Yes.
swing. The hard part is getting it back in again safely and stylishly. But I'd done it many times before and I was feeling kind of cocky. And you do this little kind of hip flip thing and it comes over the top and in
Okay.
theory, you catch it, and I missed it, and the SM58 just swung straight down and hit me right in the balls. And this was approximately a second and a half before I was due to start singing,
No.
which is quite hard to do after you've been hit hard
So
in the balls.
was everything an
So
octave higher?
no, rather than kind of going, yeah, I kind of went, oh, and then managed to sort of struggle through it without actually throwing up, though it was a close run thing. And then we finished the show, and other than this, it was a great show. We did very well at playing on a bigger stage than we were used to. But afterwards, I was talking to my friend Dave, who'd been in the crowd, and he said, great show, you did very well. And I said, did people notice the mics in the balls thing, or did I pull that off? And he went, oh, no, everybody saw that. He was like, it was on the big screen. The camera guy was zoomed right in on you, and
Oh my
10,000
God.
people saw the mic make contact, and there was an audible kind of like "Ugh," kind of noise in the crowd. I mean, I think people were sympathetic, but it was definitely a moment of like, well, fucking A. That's my life.
That's amazing. I mean, do you obviously a fan of the film? Do you think that Spinal Tap is a really kind of accurate depiction of what
Oh
it's like
yeah,
to be a working
it's
musician?
yes, definitely. I mean, it's it's a fantastic piece of art. I mean, legend has it that Ozzy Osbourne saw it and didn't realize it was a comedy, and called them up and tried to get them on tour as a support act.
No, is that true?
Apparently, I mean, in fairness, this is when Ozzy was at the peak of his kind of snorting lines of ants and
Yeah,
that sort
yeah,
of
of
thing.
course.
So I'm not sure he was in his most kind of focused state, should we say?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's almost as a touring musician, it's almost a painful watch in places because it's just
Really?
very on the nose.
Wow.
And I mean, it's also it's so culturally ubiquitous that it's kind of like it's entered the folklore of rock and roll. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there is no band anywhere in the history of music since 1981 or whenever that film came out who hasn't said "Hello Cleveland" whilst walking down a corridor. It's just a thing that you do. So it is sort of embedded.
Yeah.
And I sort of wonder what it would have been like to have actually lived through the release of that film as touring musician. I imagine it would probably have been quite
that's
rough in a way.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, they're releasing Spinal Tap 2 next year, so hopefully.
I saw some clips from it, and I thought they were pretty good. So
you've seen clips?
There's some clips on YouTube. Yeah,
I don't even. Okay, we'll talk after.
Yes.
Okay, so you're I mean, you've mentioned your previous band. We know that you are into you're kind of the heavier side of your music, though what you do is kind of the whole kind of folk punk thing. I know that having been a fan of yours and looked through your back catalogue, you obviously take inspiration from the heavier side as well. What are the 3 most listened to songs on your phone at the moment?
I don't really listen to music on my phone, but I'll try and answer in the spirit of the question.
Okay,
I mean, do you mean recently or of all time?
Yeah. Like what sort of 3 tracks do you find yourself maybe this week or even today?
Well, recently I've been listening to a lot of the new Cannibal Corpse album, Chaos Horrific, which is fucking great, and I love Cannibal Corpse. And what I love about them is that they're an institution, and the new album sounds exactly like Cannibal Corpse. They have not taken any stylistic left-hand turns. It's just brutal and in your face, and everything that you'd want from a Cannibal Corpse record. So I was very pleased with that. I've been listening to that quite a lot. I'm a massive fan of. Do you know Lingua Ignota?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, she's really, really something. And I've been listening to a lot of her stuff for years, but she's kind of hanging up that name. I think she herself is going to continue making music, but she's retiring the Lingua Ignota moniker, and that she played a show, her sort of last London show the other day, and I wasn't able to go because it was my wife's birthday, and we went to see Les Miserables instead. My wife is not a fan of extreme music. I very much am. Beyond that, I mean, the guy I'm mixing a record for right now is called Micah Schnabel, and when you're mixing a record for an artist, you quite often spend your time dipping in and out of what they've already done to kind of get a feel. So I've been listening to, I mean, again, I'm a huge fan, so I know his catalogue pretty well, but just kind of listening through to it has been pretty cool.
You have managed to be super relevant for a very long time. No, it's true. I think you have. You're one of those names that just it almost seems like a generational thing. Like loads of people just know your music and know who you are for good reason. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had you on. But how do you stay relevant? I'm constantly changing industry.
I'm gonna dispute your terminology a little bit if you don't mind.
No, I do mind.
Somebody once. I think that one of the things I like about what I do, and this wasn't really intentional per se, but what I've done has never been cool. It's never been hip necessarily. Do you know what I mean? Like people who go to Vice parties don't tend to listen to my music, and they never did. And there was a moment in time. This was in around 2013, 2014, when my kind of mainstream in quotes popularity was at its peak, where somebody once sort of cussed me out a bit in a review as being not relevant, and I thought it was amazing. I loved it. It filled me with joy because I can't imagine anything lamer than caring about what is or isn't quote unquote relevant. I mean, what does that even fucking mean? Do you know what I mean? Imagine spending your listening time looking over your shoulder to check that what you're listening to is relevant. I mean, fuck off. Yes. Do you know what I mean? It's what a waste of time. And I don't listen to music that's in the charts. I mean, we had the #1 record last year, which on some levels I was very proud of, but it was a slightly conflicted moment for me because growing up in the 90s, almost my kind of social definition was I was the kind of kid who didn't care about music that was in the charts.
Yes.
If you see what I mean. You know, and it was a point of pride almost that I hadn't heard what was in the charts, didn't care about what was in the charts. It wasn't meaningful to me and my life. And so it was quite weird to then be at the top of said charts.
Yes.
But you know, I mean, I think that to the extent that I've continued to have a long term career, I mean, part of it's just kind of stubbornness, refusal to fuck off. But there is a sort of one of the joys of being 10 albums in and being in my 25th year of being a touring musician and all that kind of stuff is that at a certain point survival becomes its own kind of statement, you know. You know, if I've released 10 records and the ninth one made 10 records, the 10th one isn't out yet, so I've made 10 records and the ninth one went to number one and I'm still got a kind of career, my solo career has been going for 18 years now, like at a certain point, like it becomes inarguable. People can say they don't like it, and they often do, and that's totally fine. I have no problem with that at all. But you can't argue that it's meritless because it self-evidently isn't. And there's almost a kind of a security that comes with longevity in a way that I enjoy, and it's quite nice that I can, you know, there's a kind of comfort in knowing that in some ways the best answer to your critics is to persist, is to continue. And I think pride is a dangerous emotion, but I am proud of the fact that I am still standing and still doing this.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a dangerous emotion. I mean, I think you've earned it, to be honest, and that, you know, I think you've had a great career. You know, so many hundreds and thousands of shows in front of millions of people. I think, you know, to kind of almost 10 studio albums in to go, actually, I'm quite proud of this. I think you kind of deserve to say
well,
that.
That's kind of you to say.
That's right. Just call it a tenner.
Right, okay.
So, what is the best thing about being Frank Turner? What is the greatest thing? What's the you wake up in the morning and go, do you know what? I'm fucking Frank Turner. Like, what's the best thing?
I mean, I don't tend to should phrase it in quite that way. But
imagine if you did.
Yeah, just sit bolt upright in bed and go, I'm fucking I mean, like, I don't have to have another job. I get to be creative for a living. I get to travel for a living, and that's such a privilege. And I'm very aware of how privileged that is to be able to say that and to do that. And you know, most days I get up and I think about my art, or in the case of being a producer for other people, I think about their art and what I can add to it. And that's to be able to focus on creativity with the lion's share of my day every day is something I'm exceedingly grateful for. You know, I know an awful lot of fantastically talented musicians who don't have that privilege because they have to have day jobs or whatever. And I feel very fortunate in that. And indeed, the fact that I get to do this and other musicians who I know don't is as much about luck as anything else. You know what I mean? There are plenty of people I know who if there was justice in the world as I see it, would be more successful than I am. But it is what it is. I mean, you can't sort of protest against these things at a certain point.
No, it would be funny if you did protest against your own success against other people.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, it's his third mention in one podcast, but Micah should be the biggest, most successful songwriter in the fucking world, as far as I'm concerned.
We live in a very turbulent time within the realms of the music industry, you know, the economic climate, and everything that kind of comes with the real struggles of being an unsigned band. For somebody watching this or listening to it, whether they're a fan of your music or whether they've stumbled across you in the past by mistake, what would your advice be to an unsigned artist really trying to climb that ladder, bearing in mind everything that's thrown against an artist at the moment in the 21st century?
I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is that I actually don't think it's the worst time by any stretch of the imagination to be a musician. I sort of entered the industry, quote unquote, just as it was starting to fall apart and everyone was running around with their hair on fire screaming. And so I don't really have a memory of of this sort of like fabled time of stability or whatever. But my understanding of the kind of the pre-Napster, if you like, record industry was, whilst there was more money slushing around, there were a lot more kind of gatekeepers, you know, and there is this sense now that like you can do so much more yourself. You can be, you know, there are still reasons to have record labels. There are still reasons to work with managers and booking agents and all the rest of it, but like you can make your own luck to a degree that I think wasn't necessarily true in, say, the 1990s, which I think is really cool. And I think that kind of that slight sense of anarchism, if you like, in the music industry is something I think is quite healthy. I also think that like the model of being able to make a living by making 45 minutes of music and then staying at home, which was essentially the kind of the record sales model of the music industry, was
Yes.
kind of faintly ridiculous anyway. If you take the long view of what it means to be a musician, you're either a court musician or you're a troubadour historically, and I think that that's now true again. You either have sponsorship deals or you tour, or a mixture of the two. And I think that in a way, what's happened in the last 15 years, let's say, has been a reversion to type more than it's been a creation of a new field of play, if you see what I mean. So, and the thing is, I'm aware that I'm lucky to be able to say that because I love touring.
Yeah.
And therefore, hooray for me.
I'm Frank Turner.
I'm Frank Turner. And I do worry about kind of bedroom electronica artists and the future Nick Drakes of this world. And, I know people who don't like touring or playing shows who make incredible art. And so there are issues with this statement. But at the same time, it's like, I think that if I'd been born 100 years ago and wanted to be a musician, I would have had to play every day. The fact that has now become true again doesn't strike me as a world-beating injustice, actually. But to answer your question, I mean, for young people, I mean, it's like I would say there are 24 hours in a day, and there is so much you can do. Make a video with your iPhone, put it up online, start a YouTube channel, start a podcast, make your own flyers, be funny, and of course, most importantly of all, focus on your art. I think it's really important to be your own harshest critic and to try and figure out what you could do better at every stage. I still try to do that. How successful am I with that? Other people can debate, but I think that there is so much you can do. Sitting around and kind of waiting for something to happen is a fool's errand. Make your own luck. Go out there and do stuff. Be proactive.
100%. That's amazing. But I feel like we'd have a really good time getting drunk, but that's off topic. So intertwining with that, and obviously you making reference to the fact that you kind of really exploded just after the whole kind of Napster era. Do you think that the internet is a positive tool for young musicians to have today, or is it already overcrowding an already overcrowded market?
I think it's on balance, it probably is. I think that it doesn't matter what the answer to that question is because the internet is here and there's nothing you can do about that, and you can stamp your feet about it if you don't like it, and nothing will change. I think there's an interesting thing that Brett Gurewitz, who runs Epitaph Records, who I was signed to for a while, said an interesting thing to me. He said, in the 80s and the 90s, a difficult thing was distribution of your art. To make an album, to record an album well, and to get it distributed so that people could buy it was a real challenge.
Yes.
Now the making of the art, the recording is much easier for people with kind of laptop technology, and obviously not everybody has that. I'm aware of that, but many more people have that than had access to a high-end recording studio in 1989 or whatever. And distribution is laughably easy these days. It's very easy to sign up for a Spotify artist account and get your stuff out there, or Bandcamp or whatever it might be. So I think that his point was that the challenge now is attention, is how do you get people to pay attention to you and not to there's easily more than 24 hours of new music released every single day. So it's physically impossible for anybody to stay on top of everything that's being put out into the world. So the question becomes, how do you get people to focus on you? And there's no short answer to that, but that's the game basically these days.
And you have
how
to
do you get people to how do you get people to pay attention to you and your art as opposed to anything else they could be listening to?
That's a very, very interesting answer, and it's often I ask all my guests, that particular question, because I always think it generates an interesting response. Let's talk about your new album, because you are releasing this next year.
Yes.
I know it's something that's been on the table for a little while, hasn't it? And we've sort of been going, come on, Frank, let's have it, please. So. What can we expect from this?
Well, the first thing is I'm long used to the kind of inbuilt kind of time delays that come with my chosen profession these days. Do you know what I mean? You make a record and then you have to sit on it for a while whilst vinyl gets pressed and whilst you do promotional touring and all that kind of thing. So I'm pretty zen about the fact it's not coming out until the spring next year, even though it's finished. And there's a part of me that wants to put it on the internet in some form or the other now. Because I'm very proud of it, and because there are good reasons to not do that immediately.
Okay, don't do it.
There we go. Thank you. It's a punk rock record. FTHC, my preceding record, was kind of me returning to a more kind of punk rock vibe in what I do, which was kind of an experiment in my sort of positioning, and it felt really good. I did a bunch of punk rock festivals into the summer of 2019 and just felt really kind of at home. I've long made music that's kind of punk, adjective punk, if you like. Do you know what I mean? It's close to, it's skirting around the edges of punk rock. And it was nice to just kind of release at least a few songs that are just straight up punk songs. That felt pretty good. And so it's continuing to plow that furrow. I mean, it's my first record with my new drummer, Callum, who's fucking sensational, which is great. And there's a freshness and an energy from behind the kit, which I think has infected everybody else. Amazing. My wife listened to it and said that she thought it sounded like we were enjoying ourselves, which is not always been true of every record that I've made. And it's a defiant record. It's a record about some of the things we've been talking about survival and about sustaining yourself over the long term. It's about other things too. There's some stuff about mental health, imposter syndrome, various other things. There's a broad spectrum.
But that's so relatable for people to listen to, especially now where rightly so, mental health is under the spotlight, and it should be. For your fans who maybe are going through something, to be able to connect with that, that's amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I'm very excited about it. I think it's a really good record. And it's 14 songs in less than 45 minutes, which is
wow.
And indeed, there's one 6-minute in there, which takes the average down across the board for everything else. So it's fast. And
it's all killer. All killer.
It's
no
all
filler.
Killer, no filler. Yeah, exactly. Yes, there we go.
Amazing. I can't wait to see it, and I'm making the assumption that you're going to be doing some sort of tour for this album as well.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of touring coming up. I mean, it's going to be. We're having conversations about the spring of 2025 at the moment in terms of where I'm going to be and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of shows coming soon.
So brand new album next spring, followed by a tour. And, and as you said, you're living your best life, man. You're doing what you want to do. You're waking up every morning, looking in that mirror going, I'm Frank Turner. Whatever anyone says, I'm going to say that you actually do that, whatever happens.
I think that would be an unpleasant character trait, I think, to actually do that. But I mean, I am, happy about the fact that I get to do this for a living. That's pretty cool.
Do you, when you mentioned that you've played the album to your wife, do you have a kind of a group of people that are outside of that immediate musical circle? Do you have any kind of friends and stuff that can you listen to this and give me real feedback?
Yes, I definitely do. In particular, my friend Evan, who actually does the artwork for my records, he's a guy, he's probably seen me play more times to fewer people than anybody else. Like I count my shows, and he came to shows kind of 1 to 100, quite a few of which was just me and him in a room, with him kind of getting pissed and going boo, because he is one of my best friends. So, but he's long been, he gets first listen on everything, and partly because he's been there since day one, and partly because he's not afraid of telling me something sucks if it sucks. But he likes the new record. You'll be pleased to hear. So
good.
Happy days.
Good.
But there's a handful of other people who get first listens on stuff for sure.
That's really cool. It's good that you kind of carefully distribute it to one or two people.
I mean, it's also worth saying that the Sleeping Souls serve that function to a degree as well, because I write the songs and then we arrange them together, and there is a pretty hefty kind of artistic filtration process that happens at that point. I am ultimately the captain of the ship, but people will say, why don't we try this song another way? This one's better than that one, whatever it might be. I do get that feedback as well.
Amazing. Before I let you go, I have got to ask you, what would you like your legacy to be in 100 years?
Well, I mean, the first thing is I won't be around, so who fucking cares?
See ya.
I mean, that's not an entirely flippant comment, but like, I do think that, I would be lying if I said I don't think about this from time to time. I'm not sure that it's very healthy that I think about it, but it crops up in my mind. I like thinking about Townes Van Zandt who's one of my favorite songwriters of all time. And the esteem, I have his initials tattooed on my wrist with a key next to them, because in many ways, he's the songwriter's password. If you're having a conversation with another musician, you say Townes Van Zandt and they know what you're talking about, then you're in,
Okay.
in my opinion. And I do think that being remembered as a songwriter is much more important to me than anything else.
Cool.
You know, I have no interest in being remembered as a public figure per se, but if there were people still playing my songs after I shuffle off this mortal coil, that would be awesome.
Amazing. Look, you have been fucking hilarious. So thank you for coming on. It's been
try.
You succeeded. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to all the free tickets to your tour in 2025. I just thought to get that in there. But thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. It's a lovely chat, and I'm glad that we got to talk about Michael Schnabel and Cannibal Corpse as well. That's
of course.
important